Hello and welcome to Craft with Sarah. In this video I'm going to show you how you can make your very own real-life working sunflower clock using your Cricut machine. Now this design I've done of the sunflower is available for you to use in Design Space, so check out the link below this video to get the project. It's a real working clock with a real mechanism in, and it is going to look stunning up on your wall. Here are all the pieces of the sunflower cut out, and I've used holographic card to give it a little bit of extra sparkle, and also because it's quite thick I think it will make a bit of a sturdier clock when it's all stuck together. You'll also need a clock mechanism. I bought this one on Amazon. I think it was about £5. It wasn't very much money, and there are loads to choose from, or you can get one from a local store. And it will have instructions on the back of how to assemble it, but we'll come to that a little bit later. You'll also need some 3D foam pads to stick your layers together. You can also use the 3D foam that comes on a tape, or you can get little 3D glue dots, so any of those will work fine. And then finally you'll need some glue to stick on the very top layer because it's a bit too narrow to use foam pads with. So let's get started sticking the layers together, and we're going to start at the bottom. So I'm going to put these ones to one side, and then I've got the very bottom layer, which is just the petals, and then the one on top, which is the petals with the kind of honeycomb effect in the middle. So how these stick together is you do them at an angle so that you can see the bottom of the petals poking out from the middle, and I did that to kind of give it a bit more of a filled-in flower effect. So I'm going to use my 3D foam pads, so turn over the honeycomb shape, and all you need to do is just stick your foam pads around the bottom. So I'm putting one on every other petal to start with. And we don't want to put the foam pads all the way to the edges, because if you remember how I showed you a minute ago, when it's stuck on, the tops of the petals aren't going to be connected to the bit underneath. So if you put foam on here, it wouldn't be stuck to anything. So we don't want to do that, which is why I'm just putting it around the middle bits. Actually, you know what? I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to put a bit on all of them. I'm not sure it's necessarily needed, but I'd rather be safe than sorry, especially because this is going to be quite heavy by the time it's got all the clock mechanism and everything on it. If your foam pads are a bit big, you can just cut them smaller with a pair of scissors, and then when you've added them all in, just turn it back over and then stick it. So we're sticking it so that the holes in the middle line up exactly, but you've put the petals so that they're overlapping. A good thing to check before you go any further, and I probably should have checked this before I cut them all out, is that your clock mechanism is actually going to fit, so mine will go through there. When you're cutting it out, if you maybe cut the base layer and then test it with your clock mechanism before you cut anything else out, just to make sure, because it would be a shame if you cut everything out and then your clock didn't fit. But mine does fit, so I can go on to the next layer, which is the green one. So this is going to go on exactly over the top like that. And I'm going to use the foam pads again, so put that to one side and turn my green layer upside down. Now for this one, because it's going to stick exactly over the orange, I can put my foam pads all the way to the edge, and I would recommend doing that for this one because we don't want the numbers on the edges to start drooping or falling off or coming away, because that will make our clock hard to read. So you see my foam pads are all different sizes. That's because I've cut them a little bit smaller than they came so that they fit better. And also if you cut them smaller, it means that they'll last longer. You can use them for more projects, which is always a positive. So I'm also going to put some foam on the back of the design in the middle, because I want it to be nice and sturdy around that clock mechanism. And I don't want it to sag in the middle under the weight of the clock and all the other layers. Okay, so I think that's enough, so I can peel off the backings and then stick this to the other layers we've already done. Here's my sunflower, and then I'm just going to make sure the holes in the middle are perfectly lined up, and also the green bits of these petals go in the middle of the orange ones. There we are. So I'm just going to have a little look at my clock mechanism and see how much space I've got left. And there's still quite a bit on there. So I think I'll be okay to add my next layer with the foam pads as well. So here's this one, which will sit on top. So it's going to hide that green along the petals. So you could just stick this one on with glue and then it will cover the green a lot more because it will be straight on top. So I'm going to raise it up a bit, so you might see a bit of green peeking through in the petals. But I think that'll be fine. One thing to note with your top layer is that when this goes on, it's going to need to tuck these petals underneath the yellow because they sit directly on the green. So when you're adding your foam pads, make sure you don't add any just inside this bit where the 3 and the 4 are, because we're going to need to be able to tuck that bit of black card underneath in a minute. Okay, so let's add the foam pads onto this one. I'm pretty excited to see how this comes together. This is my first clock I've made, and I haven't actually tested it before. This is my first go, so I'm really hoping it actually works when I put it all together. So we shall see. But it was a lot of fun to design in Design Space. And if you'd like to design your own clock with a different theme, or even just a different sunflower one that you've made yourself, I have got a video on how you can do that, so how you can design your own clocks, and that's part of my lovely layering training, and you can find a link to that in the description below this video. It's a collection of 10 different types of layering project you can make in Design Space. So you don't need any fancy software or expensive subscriptions to Photoshop or Illustrator or anything like that. It's all just Design Space based. And as I said, it's 10 separate videos of 10 different types of layering, and the clocks is the last video as part of that training. So go ahead and check out the link if that's something that you'd be interested in learning. But for now, let's just line this up. And this one's a little bit tricky because the sunflowers in the middle are separate. So I just need to make sure I line it all up perfectly on top of that green layer. Okay, so there's just one bit left of the card assembly, which is the flowers that go on top. And I'm going to glue these on because they're very thin and narrow, so I wouldn't be able to get my foam pads thin enough. And also when the clock's ticking, I don't want it to catch if this bit is just a little bit bigger. So I think gluing it will have the best effect. And as I said earlier, when I glue it, I'm just going to tuck the black bits of the leaves underneath the edge of the yellow circle, just so it frames the green leaves nicely without looking a bit weird when it suddenly goes yellow. So I've got my tacky glue, and any glue will work. as long as it dries clear, just in case any bits of glue seep out the edge. My glue's running out, so it takes a little while. Okay, so you don't need to completely drown your card in glue. Just add enough to some key points on it that it's going to stick nicely, including around that circle in the middle of the clock. And just putting a teeny tiny bit along the edges, making sure I've got all the different sections. And now I can turn this over, trying not to get glue all over my fingers, and stick it on. So we're lining it up exactly with the flowers in the middle, and then lift it up carefully to poke the green, the leaves underneath that yellow circle. Because we've used glue on this, it means we have got a bit of wiggle room to slide it about if it's not completely in place on the first go. So there it is. Now, because I've used holographic card, it's all shiny, so my glue isn't sticking that well. So I might just need to stay with my hands pressed on that for a while to let it dry, and then I will jump back in and show you how to assemble the clock mechanism. I've got all the pieces of the clock mechanism here and the base, and when you buy yours it should tell you on the back how to put it all together. So yours might be a little bit different to mine depending on what make of clock you've got. I will put the link to this one in the description of the video. It is an Amazon link, so you can go ahead and check that one out if you want exactly the same one. So I'm just going to take that off and assemble this according to the instructions. So I want to put the washer on the base of the clock, and then make sure my battery compartment's at the bottom. Turn around and just poke that through the hole. So just make sure I've got that nice and even. And then I can follow the instructions on here to see what's needed next. So I've got a washer to go on, then a bolt, and I'm just going to screw that in. So I've not done it too tightly in case I need to move it. So it'll just be on there for now. And then I want to add my smallest hand on top. And then the next one. Then there's one more little washer. Doesn't seem to want to fit. Maybe I'm doing it upside down. And then finally the second hand will go in the top. Now I still need to screw that all together a little bit because you can see at the minute it's not quite there. But once I've done that and assigned it all together and put the battery in, then that'll be my clock all ready. Okay, so I've had my clock made for a while, but it wasn't working quite right, so I had to do a couple of troubleshooting issues. So I thought I'd jump back onto video and just show you what I had to do in case you are having the same problem. So one thing I was struggling with was that the hour hand on my clock was really wobbly and it kept dropping to a completely different time, and it wasn't ticking round properly. And I fixed that. So the reason it was doing that was I hadn't pushed the hand far enough down the mechanism, so it was really flimsy and wobbly, I just gave it a really big push and pushed it down and got it sort of jammed onto the mechanism a bit better, and now it doesn't move, so it keeps time a lot better. Another problem I was having, which was kind of related to that, is that the hour and the minute hands kept touching each other and getting stuck on each other whenever they passed, and that was partly because I hadn't pushed the hour hand down enough, but also as they're quite ornate, I think they were just clashing. So what I did was I bent the minute hand up really slightly so you can hardly tell, but I just bent the metal a little bit, and now they can go past each other and it doesn't collide. So now that is working a lot better, and it is actually keeping time, which is a positive thing. But one other problem I am having is that my mechanism on the back moves a bit. So when this is put up, occasionally the clock can move, and then obviously the time is wrong because the numbers have moved. So I tried tightening up the bolt at the bottom, but that didn't seem to help an awful lot. So what I think will work better is if I just make sure it's in position. So I've got the 12, I turn it over, and then this is pointing up towards that 12. I think just a little bit of tape over it to put it in position is going to make a lot of difference. I'm using this masking tape. Hot glue might work, but I'm a bit worried about it melting the plastic. And masking tape might be a little bit flimsy, so a thicker tape like gaffer tape or duct tape may be better. I'm just going to stick this to the back so that it can't move, and then it will make my clock more reliable. So that's just a couple of things that you may need to do to keep your clock keeping time correctly. So hopefully this will make a difference. I might need a little bit more, but I'm being careful not to cover up the battery compartment because I've still got to put my battery in, and I don't want to cover up the wheel because I'm going to need that to set the correct time. But now I see I can't move the card, so it's going to stay in position. So between that and the changes I just spoke about with the hands of the clock, I think it's going to be an awful lot more reliable now. So if you are having those problems with your clock, just do those basic troubleshooting things and it should work a lot better. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and making your very own sunflower clock. If you have, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel for loads more Cricut tutorials. If you'd like to design your own clock, I do have a separate video on how to do that, and it's part of my lovely layering training series, and you can find out all about that by following the link in the description below this video. So I hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you for watching.